Oh shoot, we're a minute late.
Yep. It wasn't me, I tell you.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Hey everybody, this is Jimmy Doane Show. Hope you're doing well out there in the digital universe.
Boy, if you're out there in the west area, can you imagine you're in Arizona and buried under feet of snow?
You snowed in. Yeah, well, and we're having a rough time here in Florida as well. It's been 80s all week.
80s all week, no rain.
Yeah, man.
It's been terrible. I mean,
a little rain today, but not like...
No, we had like 4 drops.
Yeah, that's like rain from other places, not like Florida rain.
No.
Anyway, this is Jimmy Doane Show. We do this twice a week, 4 o'clock, Wednesdays and Sundays. I'm Counselor Curtis.
And
Jimmy Doane.
Jimmy Doane's right here.
There he is, and there I am, and there he is.
Yes, oh, look at that.
And here we are.
Okay, good.
So what's happening?
Well, a couple of little notes before I get into the stuff. What happened was I started the news after Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, and some on Saturday. I picked up some news articles that had been superseded.
Okay.
One has to do with the guy who has now been arrested.
Jussie Smollett.
Yeah, Jussie Smollett. I mean, and then written out of the show.
Well, yeah. Well, now things have changed actually since our last show. As if you remember, I scolded us for bringing it up again after we talked about it twice in a row already because we were first on the scene. But
right.
Things have changed now. I learned after the last show that he also sent the letter.
Right.
To
yes. Oh yeah.
him. Okay, that changes everything. It's huge. That's huge for several reasons.
Well,
I mean, first
the check. How about the check?
No, that's okay. That's just about proof. And yeah, that was Charles Barkley had the best quote of the week, which was, "You don't commit crimes with a check." But that sounded like some good advice. But that's not the issue. The issue is several things. Okay, included with the letter was some white powder.
Right.
Okay, that's counterfeit ricin.
Right.
In Florida,
aspirin.
Right, but in Florida, having counterfeit stuff is the same as having the real stuff in terms of level of charge, because you can do the same stuff with it. And here, if you think about this, I took it easy on Jussie last week and said, oh, not really a victim, not really a crime with a victim, because I don't think he wouldn't have testified in court against anybody. He never expected to catch anybody. I don't think he expected to just get away with it. But this now, if you think about this, who's the person who opened that envelope? What about the mailroom people? For the last several weeks, they have all believed that they were near death. They must, I mean, you must have interpreted that as an actual attack if you were in that situation. So theoretically, everybody at the studio, everybody who works there or with him could be going through real trauma. Life or death, when your mind goes through that calculation, it's not pretty. It's like from lifeguard school. If you ever save someone or just watch someone be saved, you would think that they would be happy after they get saved. They're not.
No.
They're very upset. They are pissed off, and they don't thank you. They run away from you.
Really?
Yes, because the mind cannot accept that it allowed you to put yourself in a situation where you almost died, because it has to move forward. The mind has to move forward like the next step. It has to go forward tomorrow and the next day, and it has to do the same decisions that it already was making. And so now you've just told it, you made a horrible error. You walked into a lion's den, like I mean, you did the whole, and it was awful, and whatever it was. And these people, and the problem is that it's not a thing that they can evaluate as something of danger, like walking into a lion's den, because it was just working at the studio, for example. So it screws with your head, and you have to be able to suppress that and go, it was just luck of the draw, random thing, not going to happen again. It wasn't NBC or whatever it was. It was some random, but all of those people potentially suffered serious injury. In fact, he terrorized them. I mean, if the kid had died in a car accident, those people would have gone through the rest of their lives thinking that they were the victims of a near terrorist attack. So, I mean, now it turned out to be aspirin. Maybe they could tell themselves, okay, it was just aspirin. But still, what about up until that time? So, and then again, of course, the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everybody should realize that there is something called a famous person's defense. If you're a famous person, you get treated with kid gloves in terms of your sentencing. That's just how it is. And also at the trial, you can be just let off. It's amazing.
Well, you know what the latest thing is he's saying is that this was an exercise in self-defense. This was not supposed to be any kind of a hate crime. This was just a simple exercise to
he
see.
Can spin it anyway.
No, this is this new spin.
Yeah.
Is that no? There's wasn't any harm here or anything like that.
Not only, and here's two more things about the letter thing. It proves he did it twice.
Yeah.
He committed the crime twice. He committed a hoax and it didn't work.
Right.
So he committed a different hoax.
Right.
So the state of mind, I mean, recidivism, clearly the guy, he's in a bad spot in terms of his state of mind. Okay, and then finally, whatever, I don't know what letter I'm on, it's federal. And so he has a different jurisdiction and different people to deal with. And the feds, as we talked about with this whole Mueller thing, they don't fool around.
No.
5-year sentences, no problem, like candy. Here you go. How many do you want? So I hope for his sake he gets the famous person's defense and sentencing and that, for that, but I don't know.
Got to be the height of stupidity, though. When you think about it, what all went.
Well, Shapiro had a great comment, which I thought of as well, which is he was a much better actor than he was a writer. He wrote the plot had lots of holes in it, but so didn't turn out.
So anyway, just to mention a couple of things that have happened since then that I'm not actually going to go into, but I just wanted to mention them. Tonight's Oscars night.
Yes.
So Mrs. Jimmy, you're gonna watch, I guess, part of it with Mrs. Jimmy.
I've been enslaved.
You've been enslaved. The deal is, of course, all she cares about is the red carpet. So
right.
The rest of it is like. And also on Wednesday and Thursday, Trump meets with Kim Jong-un in Hanoi, which we talked about before. I mean, the irony of meeting in Hanoi after, what we did to Hanoi 30 years ago or whatever it was, is just mind-numbing, when you think about mining the harbor and all that kind of stuff. And here we are on a peace mission, for God's sakes, in Hanoi. I thought
how times have changed.
Yeah, well, that's right. And another piece of big news, which I really have no knowledge about, I've tried to keep up with it, but it is this Brexit business. The Brexit failure, is it a failure? What's going to happen? Who knows what? And my thinking was when they voted for it, this would happen with bureaucracy. I mentioned this when they voted for it, and that was the bureaucracy is like molasses, and they're going to just weigh this thing down. That's like with the Trump business, and it's this morass. It's the swamp, the molasses, or whatever.
Well, they built in what they think would be a fail-safe. And for that, a contingency for exactly that, which is what they call the hard exit. And that means basically no deal, no nothing. It's just over.
Well, it's supposed to be what, March 9th or something.
Something like that. Is it 12?
We're coming up on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I look at this stuff, and you're thinking it's going back and forth and this and that.
Well, but that's what it would do. That's what that's the negotiation. It has to be that way, and it has to be doom and gloom from both sides.
Right.
It'll be over. Economy will be destroyed. No matter which way, everybody's got their models and everything that shows the economy is going to be destroyed if their side doesn't win.
I just as I say when I look at it from afar, like as much as they look at us from afar, over the pond or whatever, and I'm thinking this is like who's benefiting?
Well, I say, what are you doing over there? Right. Well, no. Look, this is, I think, quite important, and it's awesome to me if you think about what it would mean, a secession by vote in the modern era,
right?
Which is really unheard of. Not by war or anything else. Just we vote to no longer associate with you, kind of thing. And so I hope that it's successful for that regard. And then there's the one of the options is a revote.
Yeah.
Which to me is almost the height of irony or hypocrisy or some type of French word that.
Yeah, right. Well, they're having a revote up in North Carolina, but because that was because of fraud.
Well, okay, but this is because they don't like the outcome. This is like a revote because it's not going well.
Yeah, we're gonna have a do-over.
If they do that, I think it'll be a hideous blow to whatever democracy thinks it is.
I don't have any ideas. Well, the thing about it is, look, for thousands of years, Britain has been separate, and they've done just fine. They ruled the world for a century or whatever, and now they're glommed onto this God knows what all Brussels monstrosity, and who wouldn't want to get away? As far as and of course they're saying, well, what's going to happen to our trade? And nothing's going to happen. They still have manufacturing plants. They still are very productive. They can be.
Well, the way I look at it is that we all want to be together in terms of in the same trading circle. We want to be, in that regard, very closely allied with no barriers and freedom of access. We want to belong to the same trading circle because to the extent that we can do that, we can differentiate our labor out to the finest point and thereby capitalize on the most number of people.
Well, one of the little minor problems, of course, with the EU is that they're already separated by language.
Well, that's what I was getting at is there are other things that separate us and bring us together other than economics. And those are some of the things that are getting in the way. And it's the social movement that has been pushed by Brussels. Yeah. The freedom of movement, which, okay, fine to a point, but now it's been abused, obviously.
Right.
And there are some other issues that they had to deal with because the arrangement is not entirely economic. Now, as you know, there's the economic union. There's different pieces to it, and that's why they call some people want to make a deal because they want to preserve the economic unity of the groups but disassociate from them
socially.
One
of the minor problems they've got is the same thing that we have here in the United States. There are 9 million rules and regulations hampering the free exchange of ideas and stuff. You don't, obviously you can travel over the border, but I mean,
that's why it's a hideously ridiculous negotiation.
Right.
Because everybody's group is over there trying to preserve their little niche that's been written into the law, and the tax reductions and the trade code here and there and everywhere and all these various little places. And I'm with you. The whole thing should be swept away. But that's why I'm hoping for kind of a hard exit, because that would cause them to have to renegotiate all those things.
It'd be like in that the Star Trek, the original one called something about Armageddon, and where Spock, these were the two planets that were fighting, and they would bomb each other with computers.
Right.
And then they would march into the disintegration chambers, and so finally Spock and they destroy the computer. And the guy says, now what's going to happen? Well, now guess what? You're going to see real war. And so that's what, when you say the hard Brexit, everybody's screaming about this, that, and the other thing. But now you're going to actually have to sit down and figure something out.
Well, and what I think whatever negotiations would come out of that these days, there's a lot more transparency in things, I think. And so I think it'd be just fine to renegotiate. There's a lot of impetus for the companies to negotiate.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
And so so that's why I don't think there'll be any issue either way.
Everything's going to collapse.
Yeah.
This is what's going to do it. And also, one other thing I wanted to bring up before I get into my little list here was that you brought up this, and you sent me this, and I think this is exciting for local people here in town. I did not know this, but we have an elephant ranch.
Yes.
Man, it's just right down the road here, 20 miles away.
Yeah.
And I am going to go there.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, they got, and you can actually go pet the elephants.
Oh, yeah.
This is, who knew this?
I know. I heard about it one time a while back, and I heard about one in DeLand, and so I was searching for it, and I found that one, and I thought, wow.
Well, we also have one up the road here near High Springs, for the big cats.
Yeah.
That's another one. And of course, then we have Luby's, which is the big bats.
Right.
I mean, have you seen these bats hanging on the thing? They're this tall.
Yeah.
Those are all fruit bats. One of the good news is, if you see a huge bat, it ain't a vampire. It's a fruit bat.
Yeah.
It's the little bats that are the ones that'll suck your blood.
Oh, okay.
So just point of information.
How do they turn into big old vampires then?
They don't.
Oh, okay.
So that's the whole point. You see these huge bats. They like to eat. Cantaloupes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you go over to Luby's, and they have all the big Malaysian fruit bats that are hanging from the tree, and they're like this tall, but all they eat is, they throw a watermelon in there every once in a while.
Oh, winged rat.
Yeah, winged rat, mighty big winged fox, of course. Okay, first item of business on my list here, real quick. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has announced he is to shut the nation's border. And we've mentioned this before.
Well, we've been talking about Maduro for a long time. I think we can.
Well, what's interesting is that he is not allowing aid into the country, which is all stacked up in trucks. And there was a picture.
Poison disguised as aid.
Well, right, whatever. But it was interesting because apparently I saw, Google Map or something like this. And what they did is apparently they burned at least one of the trucks to the ground.
Photoshop.
Well, yeah, maybe. Interesting you should mention that, because there are some reports coming out now that say, hey, what are you talking about? Here's a picture of our grocery store, and there's all kinds of food in here.
Right.
We're loaded up with food, and nobody's starving here. This is all fake news. This is all Trump stuff and everything.
I watched an interview with Maduro. Some little girl, and I guess it was the UK or something, and she was asking him the questions, and those were his answers. He was like, "We have plenty of everything. It's not a problem. Everything's cool."
Well, the question,
it's all propaganda.
They basically seal off the border. Like for instance, the Dutch islands that are out there in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't fly in and out of there. They were a trading partner. They've closed down as far as your shrimp boats and your fishing boats.
Can you blame them when the U.S. is invading?
Yeah, right. Okay. I mean, well, of course, that's one of the ways you always stay in power, is you call on the great Satan, as we have always been for these many years. So anyway, he says, Maduro says, I don't want to take any decision of this type, but I'm evaluating it, a total closure of the border of Colombia. And of course, one of the things that the question in one of the comments was, wait a minute, let me get this straight. Venezuela can close its border and we can't? I mean, So,
well,
again, it's just one of those things. So anyway, banning air and sea trips from the 3 Dutch Caribbean islands, and the indefinite shutdown of the maritime border applies to commercial and fishing boats between Venezuela and the Dutch islands. And it was interesting that the comment was, the closure was ordered for the protection of the territory and, quote, in the face of possible unauthorized incursions, unquote, the Venezuelan state news.
Told you.
Well, I'm reminded, for those of people who can remember that was when we were invading Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Iraq, excuse me. And the guy was the spokesperson in England.
Right.
Was standing on the building saying, "We're okay. We're going to fight them all." And in the background, the soldiers are sweeping over the place. And guys, talk about.
That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. And I think we're finally seeing the end. I think we can sort of check the box. We called this one. We were a little bit early.
Yeah.
We were hoping that not hoping, but we thought by 2009 this kind of thing would have gone down. And here it is, 2019. But it doesn't look like Venezuela will make it out of the year without a regime change, I would think.
Yeah. Well, of course, the thing is, it's one of those things I've always said is not my job.
And well, no, it's not our job. We better not be getting involved. But I don't think that we're. Well, we're not going to do anything.
They got the 2 warmongers down there.
Who?
What's his name?
Bolton and.
No, Bolton is one, but Pence is another one. Huh? Yeah. The guy that just Abraham, whatever his name is.
What are we going to do? Give him a tank or something? I mean, we're not going to do anything.
All right. Well, we'll see. Mm-hmm. Next small item: a white nationalist U.S. Coast Guard officer plotted to kill Democrats and journalists. And this was this.
Oh, right, yeah, that guy.
It was this guy. His name is Christopher Paul Hansen, 49. He wrote a draft email describing how he was dreaming a way to kill almost every last person on Earth, and he was trying to. He was apparently a super right wing guy, militant, whatever you want. But what I thought was interesting was they caught him, of course, before he could do anything. But then they showed a picture of his abode, and he was loaded to the eyeballs with every kind of gun you can imagine, and weapons, and all this stuff.
Coast Guard guy.
1,000, right? 1,000 rounds. But I'm thinking, so what's he going to carry on his back? I mean, there's more than enough. He can. I mean, how many? This. Well, I'm reminded of in the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
When they put all the guns in themselves and went, no.
That's not how it happened. Well, what I'm reminded of is the guy who attacked the White House during the Obama presidency.
Yeah.
He got a whole bunch of weapons and everything. He drove up there. He left all that stuff in the car, and he took a knife and he ran into the White House.
Yeah. No, well, that's not saying. Look at this.
They're crazy.
No, there's no question.
Newsflash.
We're talking, but it is interesting. He obviously got past the psychological exam the Coast Guard obviously gives. Well, as they said in Dr. Strangelove, when they were talking about this guy having gone nuts, they says, and George C. Scott says, well, there may have been a slight slip up but you can't blame the whole program.
That's right.
U.S. federal agents found 15 firearms, including several rifles and more than 1,000 rounds of ammo.
That's nothing, man. We got that here. I mean,
no, we don't. But I love this. This is another thing. I thought this was kind of funny in the article. The list. Mm-hmm. Created in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, Bill Gates is in on it.
Right. I mean, go get Bill Gates. And journalists such as MSNBC, Chris Hayes and Joe Scarborough and Chris Cuomo.
That's why Joe was so pissed off this morning.
Is that what it was?
I saw.
Well, wait a minute. Why would he be pissed off?
Because he was a target.
I know, but that's hero. That's hero stuff.
Well, yeah, but
I'm so important. I am so important.
Yeah, but first you have to be viscerally angry about it. First you have to. First you have to be you have to be victimized. Like you can't just.
Okay.
You can't. Yeah. I mean, you have to come out with the outrage.
I guess.
And now you settle back into the.
You settle back into the I'm a hero thing. Just think, I'm so important.
That's it.
Okay, this was an article that I pulled out.
Trump's people tried to take him out.
This is I wanted to.
Did you see RNC former chairman Michael Steele said that guy was Trump's people.
Yeah. God, I mean, you just. I'm going to show you.
It's clear. It's like my favorite analogy is Hitler had a dog, so you have a dog.
So there. Connect the dots. Connect the dot.
Connect the dot. That's it.
There's one dot connected. Yeah. Well, anyway, the next thing I had on my list was this. I pulled this whole article up. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is. It says the transgender people are now it's a crime in Scotland to laugh at transgender people. So it says transgender insanity. Police are now jailing people for laughing at men in women's clothes. Now, I thought this was kind of interesting in a way. Let me just see here what I've got.
How are they going to enforce that?
Wait, you ready for this? It turns out that one Graham Spears, a father of two and a construction worker employed in St. James construction site, was walking past a pub in Edinburgh with a few of his buddies. Spears and his friends were specifically accused of pointing and laughing at this person who was transgender. And obviously, the guy obviously didn't do a really good job of disguising himself as a woman or whatever, however this appears, but obviously he considered himself a woman. And so the transgender person then did what anyone would do when somebody laughed at him. He promptly called the police.
What anyone would do.
That's what anyone would do, who take things very seriously these days. The Edinburgh News, straining to make it sound as if the beery chuckles of a few construction workers really were a big deal, referred to the incident as unprovoked verbal assault on her. And I thought that was kind of interesting because they weren't obviously looking at this person as a her, and they were pointing and laughing. But the point is they got hauled off. I mean, they got charged with laughing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point more than that is that now you can make a case that anyone should be arrested at any time because whatever their expression is, it's sarcastic or it's you're laughing on the inside, and so I mean there's nothing. Once you start arresting people for words, we're still in the golden age over here, where you can still say anything you want. There's nothing you can say that can provoke somebody. There's no defensive provocation. What?
What are you talking about?
Well,
Didn't you see that video that went viral the other day on the campus out in California where this guy had been brought in there to recruit conservatives on the campus of UC Berkeley, and they beat the crap out of the guy.
But they're going to prosecute the people if they find him.
If they find him, that's another thing. How can you not find this guy, for God's sakes?
Well, and there are lots of cameras everywhere, so they will find him.
And everything. And there was the girl that threw coffee on somebody. She was there too.
And those people get charged. What I'm getting at is that we still draw the line at the violence.
At physical abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And we're still sticks and stones, break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Although I did see an American woman the other day vote for something, and she and her quote in the assembly was, we all know that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words sometimes hurt us very deeply. I was like, what?
Where's the blood?
What? I just couldn't believe it. I was like, no, that's not the rhyme. Go back to nursery school. You didn't learn it. What happened?
That is funny.
It's crazy.
Well, it along the same kind of lines is that the Law Center, hate groups in the U.S. at highest level in 2 decades. Now, you know who does this?
The Southern
Poverty Law Center. I mean, you talk about a hate group. This is the pot calling the kettle.
I'm telling you, I know a girl who works there. I'm defending you. Don't worry.
Oh God, you got to be kidding me. Have you seen their map that they have of all the hate groups?
Yeah, but they color code it, and they don't do anything about it. I mean, they sue some people. They sue if you really do stuff that's bad, but
these people are a hate group as far as they hate groups. Therefore, you are a hate group. I just think
close.
Anybody gives these guys credibility to me is crazy.
Here's why I give them the credibility. They only use the law as their sword. They're never taken to the streets with freaking sticks and masks. These people. Yeah, and to me, that's what a hate group is. Antifa. You got there's groups out there who will literally grab their sticks and go down there. And that's where you cross the line. If you stand back and you toss lawsuits at people,
well, how about
the worst that happens is people knock them out of the park
and just scream at them? There's the Baptist church or whatever that goes to the military graves and stands over there and says, "You murderers" or whatever.
Right. Well, and of course the Supreme Court ruling, and this is a touchy one. The Supreme Court ruling gave the military families a perimeter.
Yeah,
and
right.
Said
Same thing with the abortion clinics.
Right. You have to be back a certain amount, and that makes sense because realistically, words it's volume, and there is some pain involved. Seriously, if you're sitting there with one of those little horn or something, I mean, that's annoying as hell. Or a chainsaw just to make a leaf blower or something like that. You can disrupt the other person's quiet enjoyment in a way.
Well, they did that here when they just literally they hollered the guy out of here who was on stage to give a talk, and they did this, no pain, no whatever their little thing was, and in unison, 1,000 people.
I think they all should have been chucked out of the freaking auditorium. The perimeter in that should have been the auditorium.
Yeah.
You want to shout that shit outside? Get out there.
So anyway, it turns out though that the SPLC or whatever it is, this time here's what they say. Let's see, they figured the highest number since the center broadened its survey of such hate groups in the 1990s.
Broadened its survey.
Yeah, right. No, what they said is now
the highest number since we expanded our parameters.
Right, exactly. And so this time dovetails with Donald Trump's campaign and then his presidency, a period that has seen a 30% increase in the number of these groups, she said.
But it dovetails.
In the 3 years prior to that, so forth, and during Barack Obama, hate groups were declining, according to the SPLC. Okay, the Law Center, based in Montgomery, Alabama, defines a hate group as an organization that attacks or maligns an entire class of people. And I thought it was interesting because Hillary said called about the deplorables, which, you know,
she's a hate group.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, and of course there are a lot of people that says the SPLC has a particular bias against conservative groups, calls them hate groups. So it's, you know,
they're the only media group that has a bias against conservatives.
No, not exactly. Okay, here's a legal item.
Aha!
Legal item. Let me just see how we're doing here. Okay, SCOTUS cracks down on civil asset forfeiture.
Yes, this is big news. Did we not cover this when it happened? I read about it.
I don't think so. The Supreme Court. No, this was on Wednesday. It would have been right before the show. I don't remember bringing it over here. It was on Wednesday. That unanimously ruled that state and local governments are not exempt from the constitutional prohibition against imposing excessive fines on citizens, significantly constraining the ability of law enforcement to seize property of criminal suspects. Now, there's two arguments on this, of course, that I thought were interesting. Ruth Gator Ginsburg wrote the opinion for 7 of them, I think, for 8 of the 9 justices. She argued that state and local governments are unconstrained. Argued that state and local governments are unconstrained by the 8th Amendment's excessive fines and are likely to abuse their power. Now, what was also said is that somebody else came up and said, wait a minute, the 8th Amendment is a federal thing, so, you know, it doesn't apply to the states. Well, as you well know, ever since the 14th Amendment, you know, they've expanded the heck out of it. And so I guess this is another time they expanded it again.
Well, they actually rekindled another doctrine that you are very fond of, and I am as well, substantive due process.
Ah, okay.
Which was, according to Justice Thomas, the reason for the underlying ruling of the majority, if I'm keeping the cases straight. But from my perspective, what this is a situation we've been talking about for a while. Actually, this has to do with civil forfeiture of assets, where they're just taking people's cars and money whenever they suspect someone of being involved in any kind of...
This is a priori evidence that you're a drug dealer.
Right. Basically, we talked about the situation where they find you with a bunch of cash near the border. They just assume that you're a drug dealer and take
100 miles inside the border.
Right. Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's 100 miles, which of course is the entire state of Florida. So a huge swath, and they were getting away with this in all kinds of jurisdictions, taking people's money, cars, all kinds of things. This reverses that trend, really slams the door on that type of activity. It's a big, big ruling for those people. And
well, what they said in this particular one was that the truck that they've confiscated, apparently he'd been they caught him with some heroin.
Yeah.
And they said that the fine for this would have been 10 grand, and they confiscated his $40,000 truck.
Well, what it came down to was if they were able to allege that the truck was used as an instrumentality of the crime, right, then it could be forfeit, even if the value of the truck exceeded the fine value.
Yeah.
It was just all property. They were getting away with taking huge amounts of money.
I mean, farms.
Everything.
Stuff. They tried on a couple of them. I know. I remember seeing that.
So this is good.
Yeah. We were speaking, of course, a minute ago of the I can't remember what it was, about thought crimes or whatever it is, and of course you know that one of the big ones we had recently was the smirk. Mm-hmm. From the guy out there, in the face of the Indian and everything, and then when it finally comes out, well, needless to say, he's suing the Washington Post for $250 million because he was maligned by this thing, and over its coverage of the incident. The defamation lawsuit filed by Covington Catholic, by Nick Sandman, claims the newspaper wrongfully targeted and bullied him do its biased agenda against Donald Trump.
Yeah, so this is a bit of an overreach by his attorney. His attorney's getting a little bit uppity here.
He's going to get anything?
Well, yes, and what he should do is, as we talked about before, sue everybody up and down the river, all 89 or 130 people.
I think that they're planning on doing that.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
And that's where they're going to get their recoveries from a bunch of people who will refuse to recant or withdraw their earlier statements or just otherwise pay him. And that's where where he really should make his money is in his book deal about the whole thing. This is just to shut people up. If he were just using it as a shield, basically, you send out the things. You don't try to get rich off the lawsuits. But this, I sent him a text 5 minutes after it happened that said, "You're going to be rich, kid. Just hang on."
Yeah.
Because he was lamenting the fact of at this point, it was literally the first day, Saturday. They were still destroying his family on Twitter.
Right.
And
death threats.
So
Can you imagine?
I just said, "You're good. Give it 48 hours. Keep track of all the stuff, and get ready to sue for your college education.
Get your ghostwriter. Look up Google ghostwriters on Fiverr or something.
That's it, man. You're good. You're good." So, but that's the way you do it. You get the ghostwriter. By now, you have the book tour. You become the anti-David Hogg figure.
Yeah, right. So anyway, the lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court in Kentucky. Lawyers claimed that the Post had orchestrated a campaign to target Mr. Sandman in furtherance of his political agenda because he was white and Catholic. Mm-hmm. So, whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next thing here down in Florida, or not in Florida actually, a House panel is traveling to Atlanta to hear Stacey Abrams on voting rights.
Abrams.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abrams, right, Stacey Abrams. Now, you remember she narrowly lost the governorship.
Right.
And of course the guy she was running against, a Republican, Kemp, white by the way, bad. But he was also is the guy who was in charge of voter suppression or whatever you want to call it. The vote rolls up until he quit.
Right.
But the point is that they said, he obviously rigged the election so that there was voter suppression on her people. And so a group of House Democrats will travel to Atlanta Tuesday to hold the second series of hearings around the country aimed at making the case for a restoration of the Voting Rights Act, which was weakened in 2013 by a Supreme Court decision. Now, what happened in 2013, 6 years ago, whatever it was a lot of the states said, look, we've been under this, whatever it is, for these many years. We fixed everything. And so we do not want to have to run to the federal government every time we have an election these days. And so the Supreme Court in 2013 said, okay, you're out. Voting rights, no more under federal supervision. Well, of course, needless to say, what happened was a couple of the states went back. I won't say they went back. They decided to make the fact that you had to have an ID, for instance, to vote. And this was voter suppression, right off the bat, bang, So they wanted to make sure that the feds were involved in, I guess they want to have a motor voter law or something. I don't know what they're going to have, but the deal was that they're talking all the time about voter suppression. And anytime they lose, it's voter suppression. So.
Right. Well, as I was saying, this kind of stuff, voting is a bit of a boondoggle when it comes down to it. I don't mind voting for stuff or for amendments, say, or for particular measures, but when you get to vote for a person, that's very nebulous. What is that? You just the chance that they're going to vote for what you want them to vote for is small, from my perspective. So you don't have a lot of power, and it's just kind of illusory. What you really get out of voting. I'm happy if there's some constitutional prohibitions on.
Well, one of the things that's happened, unfortunately, is the governments at all levels have gotten so huge that there are, just literally lots and lots of specialty people, special interest groups on every, environmental, food protection, police protection, whatever it is.
Well, that's all administrative people that we don't get to vote for.
I know, but the fact is that they're administered by the people we vote for.
They're appointed by those people, yeah. But
Right.
it's just so tenuous at this point.
But I mean,
so
if
we
they-
get to vote for a person who gets to appoint another person who gets to make rules that control us.
Right.
It's just, it's ridiculous. It's gotten way, way, way out of hand. That means we're several people removed from our rulers.
Right.
And that's why the laws are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I mean, burdensome, and they're smothering us. We're
Well, they
killing
are. As
ourselves.
they say, there was that book that came out some time ago called 3 Felonies a Day. And that is, you can't even walk around without committing, crimes, as you well know. And of course, the crimes have gotten to the point now where they're revenue enhancements is what they are.
A lot of them, I mean, certainly things like driving crimes, they're not worried about anybody when they're down here stopping these people for going 45 and a 35. They're not worried about those people. They're just there collecting money, just skimming off the top. But you think about this Stacey Abrams thing and the whole the whole effort to vote. Everything may be moot point in terms of voting after Florida passed its law last year giving felons the right to vote again.
Right.
That very well may shift the entire political landscape by giving the Democrats Florida, just right off the top. Boom. 1 million people, 1.5 million people, their vote was restored. Guarantee you a lot of them will vote, more will vote Democrat than...
Why would you say that?
Because...
It was a Republican Congress or whatever, the Trump was the one that signed the thing.
I agree, it was a Republican thing. The reason is because in the public's mind right now, liberals are more in favor of criminal justice reform. And Republicans traditionally are hard on...
right.
they're pro-death penalty.
Oh, well, and they're what do you call it, mandatory minimums?
Mandatory minimum, those kinds of stuff. So I think there's going to be a huge shift in Florida if all those people get... If they
we're seeing the shift here, which is interesting. Locally here, there's an election coming up in the first 2 weeks in March or thereabouts, and it's interesting to see one of the guys that's running against another guy. One of the fellows that's on our city commission is a screaming liberal. I mean, really. Of course, this whole town is that way. We're a blue dot in the middle of a red portion up here in northern Florida. But the guy that's running against him is the same ilk, and he's trying to differentiate himself against the incumbent. And I'm reading their platforms, and I'm thinking, why am I going to bother to vote? I mean, whichever one gets it, I'm still screwed. So I thought it was interesting, though, running back here to this Stacey Abrams thing. The representative, I love the lady's name, Marcia Fudge, is the one that's head of this subcommittee. And of course, it's a subcommittee, which, and they're traveling around on our dime, I guess. Kemp's tenure as Secretary of the State in Georgia was defined by a multitude of complaints that he consistently sought to make it harder for African Americans in Georgia to vote.
A multitude.
The multitude, right. Abrams called Kemp the architect of voter suppression. So this is...
yeah, single-handedly.
Single-handedly. Well, so anyway, it's just... and of course, what happened, the first thing that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did when in a month or two ago was to reinstate this particular subcommittee because it had been disbanded before. So Fudge vowed that the record we compile will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we still need the voting rights. She sort of made up her mind. Why are they having these hearings? I don't, and they're public. Quote, public. Who's going to show up? Can you imagine if you show up there and say, this is, there, we don't need the, get him out of here.
Yeah, a chain comes in from...
So, anyway. Okay, next big deal. Mm-hmm. Pakistan will retaliate against...
Pakistan. Got a little treat. Keep on.
I was reading up on a lot of this stuff. This particular niche of the what?
This is the changing of the guards.
Oh God!
This is the daily changing of the guards.
Look at that leg.
Oh yeah, you only have to know that this is how they treat. This is real, okay?
No, you know what that's from?
I know.
Monty Python.
I know.
The Strange Walk.
Look, that's how he got this. Okay, this is real. This is actual people doing the dance here. This is how they change.
That is hysterical.
Exactly.
Oh my God! I gotta save this.
Yeah. Well, and so this is how. This just goes to show you the theater that's involved in
Well, so anyway, but the thing about it is,
Here he goes again. And they
look at this. I mean, he's.
and they've got the funny hats like little peacocks.
This is hysterical. I hope. Is this going out over our feed?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Everybody can see this, and then they close the gate. There it is.
Yeah.
Get out.
Oh my God. Anyway, so Pakistan's Prime Minister Khan has warned his country will retaliate against any Indian attack in the wake of last week's Kashmir suicide bombing, and called instead for a dialogue to calm the growing crisis. In a televised address, Mr. Khan told India that in the event of any aggression, Pakistan will not just think about retaliating, we will retaliate. There will be no other way to respond except to retaliate. Now, there's a little minor problem here. They are both nukes.
And
they are both nuclear.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Can you see this ramping up? I mean, no, you can't.
I can't because of this Peacock show here we just watched. Okay.
Okay.
This is the kind. To me, this is what it's all about. They've gone to all the trouble to have this show at the border.
Which,
so
I mean, that's like, almost like a should be on a Broadway show or something. They first of all they have the
you saw that there were stands there.
Right. But
bleachers.
But I mean, you come out first of all with the Irish people that do the little what's that dance they call?
Right. The step dance there.
Whatever it's called, they're all in unison. River dance, right? And then they have these guys. And for our next act, folks, direct from Pakistan,
that's right.
we have the guard. That's right. So Gillibrand knocks Bezos' helipad that flopped in an Amazon HQ2 project. She's from New York, and of course there are a lot of people that have been slicing back on AOC because she said, "Hey, good deal. This is great." And it's interesting to see that there are actually two sides on this. There's a bunch of people that are on her side, with her 2 million Twitter followers or whatever. Anyway, she Democrat Kristen Gillibrand said Amazon never intended to invest in New York and declined to distance herself from progressives who have expressed satisfaction that the company canceled plans to build a massive corporate campus there. All they were looking for was a massive tax break and have a continued record of profits. After campaign event, and she said that Bezos just wanted our taxpayers to pay for his helicopter landing pad. Just shows how dangerous he was from the beginning. We want to lift up good business leaders who actually know the difference between capitalism and greed. This really strikes me as greed, says Gillibrand. So there's the campaign, greed versus capitalism. It's just and the
helipad, go with capitalism.
The helipad. I mean, it's after a helipad, and when you think about the number of helipads in New York City, I mean, there's got to be hundreds. Really?
Well, look, the helipad is obviously just an object. It's a representation of ostentatious wealth. It's not because they didn't want to do the helipad. Like you said, there's a million of them there. But this whole fight, I mean, to me, this is what it comes down to. Like you said, I'm on the side of you. I don't care how much it distorts the tax code and what benefits they have to give out to Amazon. If you don't have the company there, you get nothing.
Right.
And
that's the same thing with the minimum wage. You get the minimum wage of 15, and you lay off half the people. Your minimum wage goes to zero.
No people who are worth less than 15 get to work.
Yeah.
And this is the same kind of thing. Whatever we're going to give up to get Amazon there, now you get nothing. And I mean, there were people who I've watched. Well, Counselor Bart came out against it, and I watched some comedians come out and say they didn't want the mom and pop stores to go out of business, that kind of stuff. And they don't realize that the only way the mom and pop stores can go out of business is if Amazon undersells them, which means that all the people who bought stuff would have saved all that money. And so
spend it somewhere else.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And if they want to, they could go give it to the mom and pop store.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not what happens. There's a turnover, and that's because of efficiencies.
Well, one of the things that's interesting I found Now I don't know about the I don't know about the Amazon thing, but here this was going to be a monster thing, right? Big place.
Yeah.
Do you think, how many mom and pop stores do you think would circle around there?
Well, like we talked about, there were 67,000 theoretical additional jobs that were going to be added.
I mean, can you imagine all the Burger Kings and Wendy's and everything to begin for openers?
Look, I'm with you. What's happening here, I think, is people are seeing the destruction that would have happened, and they're not weighing it against the massive creation that would have far outweighed the destruction. Outweighed the destruction.
Well, this is what what's his name called, Bastiat, I think, called the seen and the unseen.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
This is a chapter in your book, I understand.
Yeah, it is. The seen and the unseen. So anyway,
it's amazing.
It is fascinating.
But she doesn't understand that. Obviously, Gillibrand literally doesn't see that. She and AOC's the same way. She see the few $100 million they were going to give out is just too much for her. It's just look. There was billions and billions and billions, and just even the advertising for New York City. It was worth tens of millions of dollars in advertising for New York City just to be there, so that they could say home of Amazon. And look, I'm sure every other business they were trying to pitch, now they have to go. Before they could have gone, look, Amazon chose us. We're obviously awesome.
Right.
Come here. Now they have to go. Okay, Bezos just really doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, right.
Like we know. We know business.
Yeah.
Not the richest guy in the world.
No, not the richest guy who has this monster business. No, not him.
Not him. He doesn't know business. We know business. We'll take care of you. That's their pitch now. To me, it's just it's an obvious choice. This is capitalism, as you talk about many times. You have to have the capital first.
Right.
That's what he was going to show up with.
That's right.
The capital.
The capital.
And now nobody has the capital. There's nothing there. Nothing gets created now.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. If you don't have the facility to do the production, then you got nothing, and that's capital. Capital is the facility.
All that stuff he would have invested.
Really invested now, and not a government investment in something which is a scam like in Solyndra.
No, we're talking real, sustainable.
We're talking about concrete buildings and that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. Last thing I've got here is before we get to you. We're getting here towards the end. I thought this was ironic. Warren suggests Native Americans should be part of the conversation about reparations. Now, one of the big deals is reparations for slavery. And that's mostly black people, whatever, And of course, there's a fair number of people that, got here after that, and from Norway or someplace, or from Ireland or something. Why am I supposed to pay for this?
Whitey.
Yeah, Whitey. That's right. So anyway, now she's decided to expand it. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts suggested Friday that Native Americans, not just African Americans, should be part of the conversation when it comes to federal government providing reparations. Now, that's the taxpayer, of course. The federal government has no money. They have to get it from you and me. Providing reparations as a way to address ways minorities have been punished in American history. Now, there's no question about it. But it's interesting because 4 candidates, including Warren, said they backed reparations of some kind to African Americans as a way of addressing slavery and the legacy of slavery centuries later. And you just sit here and you got to think.
Yeah, my thought is there should be a constitutional amendment which is like a general statute of limitations. Which it should say something like, you don't get to bitch about stuff that your ancestors were involved in. Anything you were involved in, okay, fine, sue, whatever you want to do. Your grandma, was she part of that? Great. Is she still alive? She is standing. Once she dies, it's over. You don't get to go back and revisit the injustices that were visited on your ancestors because it's too complicated. How, like you said, what do we do with people like us who have relatives who came over 100 years ago from Sweden or Ireland, where they were Irish slaves? What are we going to sue our other ancestors for? Yeah.
Is there money involved?
Right. Well, exactly. And that's what it comes down to. Is there are going to be plenty of people who see this as there's money involved, so why not? But to me, I think there's a cutoff. I think there's a statute of limitations on social justice. You can't. It just doesn't.
Well, it is kind of interesting in a way, and that is we've seen how the statute of limitations has been disabused in some instances. But I think, for instance, when you go out in the Atlantic Ocean and you find some Spanish galleon that sank 400 years ago, and you say
Finders keepers.
Finders keepers, right? But no. There's big lawsuits everywhere. Give us our ship back. What do you mean?
Yeah. Like I said, if it didn't happen to you, you wave. That's my rule. If there's somebody alive back then whose name is on that ship or those coins, or they can somehow make a claim.
What happens if one of your ancestors, who wrote a will, by the way, the will was filed in Spain. It says that I bequeath to my offspring,
right? The benefits, the bounty of
the bounty and benefits of all my stuff. Well, the stuff shows up.
Then totally valid as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, really,
totally valid.
All
yeah.
right.
If you have a written link and there because then it's benefit that's accrued to you and you can prove it.
Okay.
But
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, that
makes sense.
Yeah, so but don't be talking about my great grandfather was aggrieved because you don't know what's happened in the meantime. For example, we could have had an intervening relative that worked their entire life for the benefit of an aggrieved party. And do they get a pass then at that point? I mean, can anybody ever?
Well, that's what they were talking about as far as this guy in Virginia. Because apparently since he's been in public service.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Apparently he's done phenomenal amount.
He's a doctor.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so at some point, does he get over the medical school prank at some point because of the and he has. I mean, obviously they let him stay there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. Shoot, there's not even anybody who can say that they were aggrieved by that. Nobody's come forward and said, "I remember reading that and I was traumatized," or anything. I found out right before I was going to do my surgery. So I'm with. I can't believe. Now, of course, I guess Warren was criticized by the Native Americans.
Oh God, are you
slow
kidding?
Your roll, lady. Like didn't we tell you you're not part of the tribe, kind of a thing. But
I mean, why would she resurrect that though again?
Because she's an idiot in that regard.
I mean, here's
political.
let it lie, lady. We understand.
She's trying to help.
You've already screwed up by getting your DNA test, which showed nothing.
It's a perfect example of somebody trying to help a group that doesn't want her help.
Yeah.
This is archetypical for her. She's trying to help them, and they don't want her help, and she's going to help them anyway.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
She's there to help.
Yeah.
It's but hey, we'll see. I don't think she's going to get anywhere. Obviously.
Well, it's interesting because apparently Bernie is now #1.
Bernie, yes, and I told you I had a video on Bernie, and I'm going to play it. I'll play it
because we're just about done.
Yeah, I'll play it for a thing, but I think I may have one thing here.
Okay.
Let's see. So that's everything you got there, huh?
My stomach, I gotta do something.
Just real quick, super fast. So, on the McCabe issue, you'll recall what's been going on with the Trump situation, obviously. I went back and McCabe has doubled down basically on.
No.
Well, basically what he says is he's insisting a couple of things. He insists that Rosenstein was serious when Rosenstein offered to wear the wire.
Okay, right.
Now, the reason that's important, and Rosenstein's response was, "No, I was joking." Okay, now two things about that. When was the last time you heard an FBI agent joke?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, he's not
on duty.
Well, he wasn't
when discussing the removal of the president.
Okay.
I mean, to me, that would be like the last place that they would joke. But maybe all the tension was there. I'm sorry, I interrupted you twice. What were you going to say?
No, it's okay. Rosenstein wasn't with the FBI then, was he?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He was the deputy assistant at that time.
Ah, okay.
He was apparently there when they had the discussion. And here's why it's important. If Rosenstein was serious about that, then it constitutes a step, an act, which could constitute conspiracy. That is to say, what you need for conspiracy is a plan and one overt act. Well, if they had a plan, which they obviously had a plan, the question is how detailed was the plan? We don't know. And McCabe said that they were at the point of where they were counting potential votes. So that's at least a plan.
A plan of a plan.
A plan of a plan. And then, if Rosenstein actually offered to wear a wire, then that could be construed as an actual step.
Well, maybe he's going to use the Trump defense.
Which is,
if Putin's going to give me, I want him to tap into Hillary's thing and give me all...
Right.
Which obviously was a joke.
That's Trump.
Right.
At a campaign rally.
Right.
Where he's, and this is, and the contrast that with an FBI guy who we know have all had humorectories.
Right.
They don't have sense of humor.
No.
FBI people do not have senses of humor. And especially not on duty discussing a super serious matter. Like the possibility that he was joking about that, to me, seems very remote.
A stretch.
It does. Very remote. And McCabe is insisting that he wasn't joking. That's the other evidence.
Okay, right.
It's like, even if he thinks he was joking, the other guy is swearing that you weren't.
Yeah, well, of course, McCabe can swear to almost anything. Nobody believes him anymore.
Well, at this point...
Maybe they will.
Well, but here's the thing.
This time I'm telling the truth.
Because he's confessing to something.
Right.
He's swearing that he committed a crime. It's like, dude, shut up. But all right. And then final thing I'm going to say is, you will notice in the coming future that...
As opposed to the past future?
That's right. Directly opposed to the past future. that universal basic income will be rebranded as the freedom dividend.
The freedom dividend.
That's right, the freedom dividend. It's coming. And of course, I think it'll be immediately rebranded as the freedom dividend after that.
D-U-M-B. I can just see it right.
So anyway, all right.
I like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a track by Kevin MacLeod, whose copyrights are on our screen. This is called Cold Funk. Earlier you heard Whiskey on the Mississippi. And this is Happy Game Show. We thank you for joining us.
We're back Wednesday.
That's right, we will at 4 o'clock right here on Facebook. Also, of course, I'm going to post this up on YouTube, but if you're here already, then you don't care. So
it should go on to iTunes, the video audio port.
Yes, we're on iTunes now.
And a bunch of other ones.
We are on a bunch of places. We're on public radio. I just added us to, and I'm trying to get us on Spotify and a couple places, other ones, but we're going up all over. So,
but what you do is the main thing is on YouTube. You got to do us a like and send your friends
or share. Yeah,
share. That helps us a lot.
That's right. But thanks, Bill, Tiffany, Bart. We really appreciate you guys joining us. I hope you had a good time at Bobble. We did. So we will see you next time. Oh, the Bernie video.
Oh my God.
On my trip. You know, as a socialist, the word socialism does not frighten me, and I think it's probably fair to say that the Nicaraguan government is primarily a socialist government. You may recall way back, when was it, 1961? And everybody was totally convinced that Castro was the worst guy in the world.
The audio's overlapping like it is. Maybe the Bob won't catch us.
The kids gave them health care, totally transformed the society. But just because Ronald Reagan...
I'm sure you can find it on YouTube.
So. The people in their own nations.
This is like from the 80s, right?
How do you find the sincerity of Senator?
Like he said, praising Castro.
I was impressed with Father Descoto because he is a very gentle.
He's like, Castro gave him health care.
Ortega is an impressive guy.
Can we send Bernie a Che Guevara t-shirt?
Oh, he's got one, I'm sure.
And he really does remind you of a hip.
All right. We'll see you soon.